Flip-hand phones, Babylons can't crack the code.
The 2022 college football season is already halfway done with its regular season as Week 7 came to a close on Saturday night. And there's been a lot of big games, big-time performances, and a lot of shakeup in the college football world in general. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about mid-season college football grades for the preseason AP Top 10 teams. Now, if you want to have a certain grade of mine for your team and how they're performing in 2022, drop down that team in the comment section down below, and I will respond. Before I move on, remember to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get into it. The number 10 team heading into 2022 was Baylor, and rightfully so. Baylor was coming off a great 21 campaign in which they won their bowl game, which is the New Year's Six Bowl versus Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, while also winning the entire Big 12 conference, a conference that they weren't really expected to win or even be in the conference championship game in the beginning of the year. The grade that I have for the Baylor Bears for their 2022 start thus far is a B-. Admittedly, that may be a little high on them. I feel like you can argue that it could be a C to C+ range, but I am giving them a B- for this video. They are currently 3-3, a unranked team, and 1-2 in conference play. Now, yes, that's not the best record out there as of right now, but I generally believe that this team is a lot better than their records show. Their defense has taken a step back from last season. It's still overall a decent defense, but the secondary hasn't exactly been the best as well. The front seven, I feel like, has been pretty good, but the back 4 or 5, whatever they run in certain schemes, hasn't necessarily been as good as it was last season, but that was expected with the loss of production they lost in the secondary. They're giving up 24 points a game, but their offense is scoring nearly 38 a game, which is pretty good. The 3 losses they have aren't necessarily terrible losses, besides maybe one, which was in Morgantown to West Virginia, and they did lose by 3. But losing to Oklahoma State, it's not a terrible loss, but they still lost by 11. And of course, their earliest loss of the season in Week 2, they lost at BYU 20-26 in a game that had a long delay before it started and a game that went all the way to overtime. I still feel like this team is very good, and of course they have to win out if they want to make a Big 12 title push, but I feel like this team is a B- grade. I feel like they're a lot better than their record overall, and I think they can really turn it up in this second half of the season. The number 9 team heading into 2022 was the Oklahoma Sooners, a team that had a lot of uncertainty when talking about them, as they had pretty much an entirely new coaching staff and added roughly about 40 new players to the roster through the portal and high school in general. And this was going to be an entirely different team from 21 to 2022, and there was a lot of uncertainty, but for the most part, people thought they were going to be a pretty good team. My grade for OU for the 2022 season thus far is a C-. Now, if you look at their first few games of the season where they absolutely dominated, of course the grade would have been something like an A. But why the grade is so low for me right now, for this midway point of the year, they're currently 4-3 and 1-3 in conference play. I believe the offense has actually been pretty good up to this point. Obviously, when Dillon Gabriel was out with a concussion for most of the TCU game and all of the Texas game, the offense was not good at all. And that was evident as they put up 7 points versus TCU without Dillon Gabriel, and they put up 0 points versus Texas without Dillon Gabriel in that game. And immediately after that game where they got Dillon Gabriel back versus Kansas, they dropped over 700 yards and dropped 52 points on Kansas. Now, when looking at the defense for OU, it's really what brings down this grade to a C-. To start off the year, OU's defense looked pretty good, but for a few weeks span, it didn't look good at all. K-State, they got exposed, 500+ yards on their head, gave up 41 points to K-State. TCU, a lot of busted plays and a lot of yards on their head in that game, they gave up 55. And Texas had their way, they put up 49 on them. Kansas, I will say they were a lot better versus Kansas, and it looks like a lot better of a defense, and they made a lot of improvements despite giving up 42 points. The number 8 team heading into 2022 was Michigan. Michigan was coming off a great 21 campaign in which they won the Big Ten and even made it to their first ever playoff appearance. My current grade for Michigan for 2022 is an A grade. There's not much that you can critique on Michigan, as they really haven't taken a step back at all. Looks like their offense has gotten better and their defense is performing at a good level as well. Michigan's averaging a lot per game, averaging nearly 43 and only giving up 12 points a game, one of the best in all of college football. They're 7-0 and they currently rank in at number 4 in the AP poll. Overall, I believe they're playing a lot better than some expected them to be. The number 7 team heading into 2022 was Utah. Utah was coming off a good 21 campaign in which they won the Pac-12 and even had a Rose Bowl appearance. My grade for the Utes is a B+. As of right now in the AP poll heading into Week 8, the Utes currently come in at number 15, and they're coming off a big win versus USC in which they won 43-42. I'm giving Utah a B+ grade, as they've been a good team this season, and it looks like they will have a shot at the Pac-12 title yet again if they can really win out. But the reason why I give them a B+ is not because they've been disappointing in any way. They've been a good team, and they've shown they can win a big game, such as beating USC. However, they do have a couple losses. They're currently 5-2. They lost to Florida in the very first week of the season, 26-29, and they lost a couple weeks ago at UCLA, which UCLA is also a top 25 team, and a team that everyone needs to look out for in the Pac-12. They lost 32-42. The number 6 team heading into 2022 was the Texas A&M Aggies. Unlike a lot of the teams on this list, Texas A&M, they did not win their conference in 2022. Texas A&M, they had a solid year as they went 8-4, and more importantly, they had one of the biggest wins in all of college football, upsetting Alabama in 2021, while also bringing in the number 1 recruiting class. Heading into the 2022 season, people expected this was going to be the year they put it all together and really made the run for the SEC title. My grade for the Aggies for 2022 is a D+. Some may think this is overly harsh, but this is a team that had a lot of hype heading in the season to be one of the top SEC teams and to be a team that could make a run for the SEC title. However, they have not done that at all. They're currently 3-3 and sit in at 1-2. I do like Texas A&M's defense. I feel like they've been a very good defense for the most part for this 2022 campaign. However, that offense is not good at all, and it all starts at the quarterback position. They haven't had any consistent quarterback play at all besides bad quarterback play for 2022, and that's what's really killing them right now. The 3 losses they have aren't necessarily the greatest losses, as they got upset at home to Appalachian State. Mississippi State blew them out 42-24, and that game really wasn't close. Granted, the loss to Alabama is not that bad. No one expected them to win that game, and they kept it close, only losing by 4. Texas A&M, they could improve their grade if they improve their play throughout the year. There's a lot of football to be played for Texas A&M, as they still have 6 games left on the schedule, but that's yet to be seen, and that's to be determined. The number 5 team heading into 2022 was Notre Dame. Notre Dame is coming off a 21 campaign in which they went to a New Year's Six Bowl and finished 11-2. This is a first year for Marcus Freeman as a head coach, and I believe some expected Notre Dame to be a pretty dang good team for 2022. Maybe not go to the playoffs, but go to a New Year's Six Bowl at least. However, that has not been the case for 2022 thus far. My grade for Notre Dame in 2022 is a C- grade. And the reason why is because Notre Dame, they've lost games that honestly they probably shouldn't have lost to. They lost to Marshall at home, 21-26. You're Notre Dame, you're favored to win that game, you're expected to beat Marshall, and you even paid them, yet you lost on your own home turf, 21-26. And you also lost to Stanford more recently. In Stanford, they have not been a good team this season at all. And that's Stanford's second win all season, as they're currently 2-4. And they beat you 16-14. Granted, the Ohio State loss, it's not the worst loss out there, as Notre Dame's defense did show up to play, only giving up 21 points to a high-octane offense of Ohio State. But the offense only put up 10. Yet again, it's only week 1. It's hard to judge a team off week 1 performances alone. The number 4 team heading into 2022 was Clemson. Clemson is coming off a 21 campaign in which they went 10-3, didn't win the ACC, and didn't even go to a New Year's Six Bowl as they went to the Cheez-It Bowl and won versus Iowa State. This was a ranking that a lot of people weren't exactly happy about, as it was a team not necessarily coming off a top 4 season. I believe the defense has had a couple games where they've had performances that haven't been up to par. I think this team is a very good team, and I do expect Clemson to be in the college football playoff, as I do see them winning the ACC and making it in one of the final spots for the college football playoff this season, and that's why I'm giving them an A- grade. The number 3 team heading into 2022 was Georgia. Georgia is coming off a 21 campaign in which they went 14-1, winning the national title. My grade for the Bulldogs in 2022 is an A grade. They're currently 7-0, and in the AP poll, they sit in at number 1. Now, you may be thinking, why are they not an A+ grade? And for me, they're very, very close to an A+ grade, as they've been dominant in pretty much every game they've played in, as they're averaging nearly 42 points a game and only giving up 9 points a game. However, I do have them as an A grade because of a couple games they've played in, mainly Kent State and Missouri, in which they haven't looked as dominant in. And of course, they both won those games and even beat Kent State by 17. But the Missouri game, they didn't take the lead till very late, and it was one that was very down to the wire versus a Missouri team that they were supposed to whoop. The number 2 team heading in to the 2022 season was the Ohio State Buckeyes. They came off a good 11-2 21 campaign in which they made it to the Rose Bowl and even won it versus a good Utah squad. My grade for the Buckeyes up to this point for the 22 campaign is an A+ grade. I know some may disagree with that, however, I believe they've been performing up to that level. They're averaging nearly 49 a game and only giving up nearly 16 points a game on the defensive side of the ball. When you look at their entire schedule, they've been absolutely dominating every team they've played every week since the Notre Dame game. And versus Notre Dame, that's their biggest outlier, as they won 21-10. Look at the rest of their games, they've been destroying teams. 45-12, 77-21, 52-21, 49-10, and most recently at Michigan State, 49-20. The number 1 team heading into 2022 is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama is coming off a 21 campaign in which they won the SEC and made it all the way to a national title game, in which they fell short and lost to Georgia. They finished that season 13-2. Heading into 2022, they were a lot of people's national title favorites. My grade for the Crimson Tide this season is an A- grade. They've been a good team. They're 6-1, and currently in the AP poll, they rank in at number 6. However, to say they've been the perfect team, or a team that a lot of people expected to see how dominant that people expected them to be, would be an understatement. Their offense has been good. They're averaging nearly 45 a game, and their defense, for the most part, it hasn't been bad. They're only giving up 18 a game. However, I don't believe it's on the level that a lot of people expected. This Alabama team, they're one of the worst in the nation with penalties, and they don't really look that disciplined, which is very surprising in a Nick Saban coached team. Not only that, but the defense doesn't look as great as some would expect it to be, especially in that secondary. They had a close call versus Texas very early on, and in a game where Quinn Ewers was dotting them up early before he fell down with injury, in a game that Alabama almost lost, they won 20-19, and in their most recent game at Tennessee, I understand Tennessee has a great offense, but they allowed 52 points. There's no excuses for that. No matter who you are, 52 points is unacceptable, especially for the Alabama team that everyone expects it to be. They lost that game 49-52. Now, for the rest of the season, I still expect Alabama to be a top team and to take a playoff spot. Well, guys, if you've made it this far in the video, drop down a team in the comment section below, and I'll give you my grade for them for their 22 campaign thus far. Before you head out, remember to smash that like button, turn on those post notifications, and subscribe if you haven't already. B. Kelly out.